What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Quake Pro League. My name is Ketchup, and I'm joined at last by the one and only Flea. Mate, I missed you. It's been a really long time, and it's nice to be back doing this together, right?
It has been, yeah. I feel like we've both lost with everyone else except for with each other for this season, so it's really good to be back on the mic with you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Not with me, I mean with you, of course. I'm not that egotistical, I promise. But hey, look, it's been a wonderful set of weeks, and even last week's action was absolutely fantastic with some rather big results for some players. I know we have a recap as we do every single show, going over what happened last time. And I mean, this week, very much a continuation of that. But standout performances, I think that is the main topic to discuss over this upcoming couple of minutes, because some players are probably feeling pretty good, others probably on the opposite end of things.
Probably so, yeah. We started off last week with Kron versus Wenger. Kron continuing his unfortunate losing streak, dropping all 3 maps against the Maestro Man, followed then by Strong Sage versus Rafa, the battle for the Americas. Strong Sage making a valiant effort. We've seen him put on some really good results against some of the best players in the world, but Rafa proved to be a little too strong as he walked away with all 3 maps.
And a result that is very typical of Rafa. I know the two of them, I'm fairly positive they have been sort of practicing together here and there, and that really just comes down to how hungry Strong Sage is as a player, right? Is to try and do as much as he can to push forward and become the best he can be, which is really what you want to do as an up-and-coming talent in this competitive space, especially a game like Quake, which is as legacy-heavy as it has been. Now, Dramis versus Chain, this was going to be another one here. Going to be seeing more of Dramis today. In fact, we're seeing Dramis in our first ever matchup. Following that, Tox versus Cygib, and that's a nice little ring out anyway. Nice shot there.
Some good plays as always. Toxic versus Cygib, if I remember correctly. Tox took home the win 2-1. A battle of the brawlers, 2 very aim-heavy players. Turned out that Tox had his number though. The LG still supremely powerful, carrying him to the win.
It's something that you always grow to see from Tox, that game-changing aim, which sometimes that's kind of all that's there, and sometimes there's a little bit more in the tank, I suppose, and that's the kind of Tox that you always want to see here. Maxter versus Avec, our next matchup. Avec, a player that we're not going to be seeing today. The match I believe that Avic's featuring in is rescheduled, so you'll be seeing that a little bit later down the line. All of the matches you can catch on the official Quake YouTube channel, so always make sure you're sticking out for that one. Razy versus Nosfa afterwards. Again, Razy has a big match to play today, Flea.
Oh yeah, he absolutely does. We're gonna get to that a bit later, but we're going to see one of the most common grand finals play out later. And then also the last one of last week, Sirius versus Zeneku. Sirius has actually been putting up some really convincing results and kept his head in the game, right? Especially during that last series against Zeneku. It could have been 2-1 for Sirius. It came down to the wire on the first 2 maps, but ultimately the Maestro Man, Zeneku, walked away with the win. And that then, Ketchup, brings us to the matches for today.
Which is very interesting. I mean, you can look at the results there. Some rather consistent victories. There's a huge spread of 3-0s. Not incredibly common. I think we've definitely reached a point in the Quake Pro League now, especially years down the line. Players are able to at least kind of conquer maybe that one map. Obviously, that's not going to be enough for players. They always want that overall series win. And especially now, we're in that position where, you know, we're having to look at the final stretch. Players wanting to get the best possible chance in the finals, and on the opposite end of that, players really trying to avoid being in the scarier position, you know, when you're on the lower end of the leaderboard, which is going to bring with it a new mental challenge that most people aren't going to have to experience. You know, that fight starts earlier than most. Now, looking at the world rankings, we're getting a clear example over who is currently on top. That man is Rafa. And it's a great story for Rafa. He hasn't been in this absolute dominant position for a little bit, and the work ethic is really starting to show. Rafa has just been complete practice, complete focus. He has another major matchup today going up against Razy, and it is top-heavy leaderboard with our featured matches. Wenger versus Zeneku is the second to last one of the day. I mean, all 4 of these players are in top 4 territory. This is where it gets really serious, because it's not just points or prize money, it's how am I shaping up versus the best of the best, as we are now not too far away from the finals.
Bit of a disclaimer there though, Rafa, yes, he is in the first place, but when looking at the top 5, he's also played more matches than anyone else at the top of the leaderboard, right? So Rafa has played 11 games, whereas some of the others have only played 9 or 10 within the top 5. So he does have a little bit of just that natural lead from having played more games, but still, it's undeniable that he's in top shape and that the practice is really paying off.
Now, I mean, there's not much left to do but start talking about our first matchup, and this is going to be Kron versus Dramis. Kron in a position where he really needs to get himself some kind of win here, and Dramis the kind of player that I imagine is feeling pretty confident going into this. Dramis is naturally an extremely confident player anyway. I know his results recently haven't completely echoed that. However, with these two players head-to-head in particular, I kind of feel like the safe bet is that Dramis will still be able to take this one.
I'm inclined to agree. Kron so far, yeah, last place on the global leaderboards, but let's take a look at Dramis first, right? Dramis didn't have the best first half, I would say, but then if we look at his recent performance, he's won 3 out of his 4 most recent games, taking down Sip, Maxter, Avik, some big names there, before dropping a series against Chain last week or during the previous week of the broadcast. But Dramis is looking to be in really good shape. We saw some impressive plays come out of him. Even when he lost to Chain, it was absolutely not a blowout and he held his own well.
Now, that unfortunately is just not the same that can be said about his opponent. I really try not to focus on the negative too much, but the elephant in the room in this series is that Kron, let's be real here, has not had the most successful path. Kron is a legendary Quake Champions player, and I think especially if you look at that sort of, I would say, first half of the game's current life, Kron was a real serious threat. It isn't quite the same here. That's a lot of grey and not a lot of red, only securing 1 victory so far. It's not looking good, as some of them would say, but hey, look, week by week, you know who you're going to be fighting. You can prepare as much as you can. Everyone has different access to being able to prepare, I think. And I still feel like Dramis is just simply going to be the favorite here. It would be nice to see Kron get a victory, but is it realistic? I'm not so sure. I guess the remaining 3 maps will tell us that story.
Also worth pointing out is that, yeah, he's only had that 1 win, right? But if we look at the losses, almost all of them have been 0-3, right? So he's only secured 1 map aside from that game that he won. All others he lost without securing a single map. So there's players whose win-loss might not be that great, but they're very consistent in at least getting 1 map even when they do lose. That's not the case with Kron, and that's why he's at the bottom of the leaderboard. Now, historically, catch-up, Kron has played Dramis twice, and he's won both of those matchups within the Quake Pro League. But today, things are indeed very different, and just like you, I kind of fear for Kron going into this series.
Times change, and players and their own journey will also change alongside it. Speaking of journey, picks and bans are ready, so we can see what our remaining half hour of maps is going to be in this first one. Molten Falls straight away, Blood Covenant, and then Awoken. The Molten Falls taking the Nyx away straight away. Battle of the Lights, but incredibly fast. The Slash comes out to play for Dramis to the surprise of absolutely nobody. But that's not where the crouch sliding ends. It's going to be Strog for Awoken versus the Doomslayer. Blood Covenant, the Athena removed, as is becoming quite common and or standard, I suppose, on Blood Covenant, because Athena is so good on that map, and it also removes her being able to get picked on Awoken as well. So there's a lot of picks and bans here that make sense. Nothing really stands out as a out of the norm pick, I would say. But on the picks alone, Dramis has a lot of comfort here. We have I think just the understandable mobility for the 2 crouch sliders that we're seeing from Dramis, and then the Blood Covenant. The Ranger is there. It's just going to give Dramis a fundamental game of Quake to play, but then that access to damage, access to maneuverability, access of just explosive combat, and that's something that Dramis can be very, very impressive at. On the opposite end of that, Kron, a lot of these picks feel quite safe to me. I know the Anarchy in particular, yeah, it's a light champion, but you know, the inject is there, the instant access to a little bit of escape potential if you get caught in a bad situation, the vision on Blood Covenant, and then just basic mobility on Awoken the Galena was taking away. And to be fair, Galena could have been a pick there for Kron in theory, but we're going to just go in with a nice strong medium instead.
I fully agree with you. I think that on map 1 and 3, especially Dramis has the upper hand when it comes to picks, right? We know that Dramis is one of the best crowd sliders, not just in the Americas, but also in the entire Quake Pro League, and he's absolutely going to let that shine, that movement of his. The only map where I kind of feel like it might be the opposite is map 2, Blood Covenant, DM6. This is widely considered to be one of Kron's better maps, and looking at the matchup, Visor historically almost always beats Ranger on Blood Covenant, just because of how powerful the piercing sight is, just because of how easy it can be to keep your distance and just keep your opponent at bay. So Dramis is really going to have to try and get up close and personal, but Kron, I think on map 2 has the upper hand. So I'm going to say Dramis at least 2-1, and depending on the shape that Kron is in, it could even be a 3-0. But Blood Covenant, I think that's going to be Kron's ticket to getting at least one map here.
Yeah, these pick and bans really show how much Kron just did not want to fight Athena. If you are in a position where you are only able to remove one option from your opponent, you had to make a choice. Do you take away Athena on a map that Athena is incredibly powerful on, and also Dramis being a high-paced player, but then by doing so, you're leaving the remaining crouch slider in play on a map that crouch slider makes more sense on. You know, it would make more sense to pick a Strong on Awoken than it would be for a Slash, for example. So yeah, bit of a decision to make, and I guess we'll find out if that decision is going to help him in any way. I definitely feel like I agree with your prediction here. I do sadly think a 3-0 could be likely, because even though on paper, just looking at the matchups on that second map, it could in theory be better for Kron. The recent weeklies that he's been playing in, there just hasn't really been much success, if at all. So within the first couple of minutes, Dramis could get some sort of upper hand and then just keep the pressure on, right? And then even then, Kron could have a little bit of difficulty with the rail, perhaps, maybe isn't able to establish that ranged game. I don't want to be too negative here, but let's just hope there's a little bit more going for him this time. And yeah, that second map could definitely work. We'll hope for his sake that it does, but Dramis, for me, clear favorite.
Same here. With that being said, we are jumping into the first map of the series, first map of the day even. We've got Kron, we've got Dramis, air control versus crouch sliding, and we're starting it off on Dramis' point of view. Kron, actually.
That's all right. I muted my microphone so I could have a sip of drink. So I was far too late to take that one over. But being able to establish that rail already is Kron. And I think that the name of the game for almost all three of these maps for Kron is try and keep Dramis at arm's reach. You're going up against someone who's famous for that aggression and that explosive combat. And then at the same time, you're definitely outmaneuvered in the champion department. This is where Kron, actually, trap is sprung there from Dramis, but not enough to quite yet secure the frag. We're able to get ourselves back up to a nice basic stack. Kron can now start to cycle, keep his stack nice and high. You can see already he's still got the inject, right? So this is going to be a bit of a green light, I suppose, for Kron to push forward and continue to be aggressive, because you've still got that extra amount of stack kind of just sitting in your back pocket. Now the chase is on, expecting Dramis to be waiting there, but not perhaps expecting the damage to be that high.
That's a rough one, especially because I feel like Kron should have pushed in at heavy earlier. Dramis was down to 15 points of health. Yeah, he had the plasma trail, but it wasn't covering everything. I think Kron could have just brute forced his way through, get the kill, walk away with heavy, but he didn't do so. And now it's actually Dramis who walks away with the first frag, landing some beautiful rails right there. Kron's gotta make a run for it. Oh, I like the play right there. Kron just hiding in the center of the map, not making any noise. We know how noisy that hoverboard can be. Kron, no doubt, very aware of that.
But by doing so, it's a horrible situation though, isn't it, Flea? Because the moment you get put into a near critical level of stack, you just know that your opponent is now using that opportunity to cycle around and pick up everything. However, that missed rail, that might be the opening. No, the shot doesn't connect. I'm not even convinced that would have taken out Dramis in that position. He's going to push really far forward, force a exchange there. I mean, that was clearly deliberate, right? That was, we're going to force both of us to spawn again, see who gets a better position. Done tons of damage here. Not enough, unfortunately, to stop the heavy from being picked up. But knowing that now, at the moment, Kron probably going to be a little bit tender so the fight can continue. And that's what Dramis is currently going to do. Secure himself another frag here, 3-0. Try and get something off spawn. Looking for the rail. Oh, nice little shot there. Good stuff there from Dramis. What does it do for Kron, I suppose? Oh, close range rail. The downtime is going to guarantee that he goes down. But so much damage there. Flea was dished out. Kron not comfortable yet. Heavy helps, but not a huge amount of weaponry there. Just a rail and a plasma gun. I mean, that's not going to do much. Oh, God.
Too predictable on the getaway right there. Yeah, but Kron, like, he's gotten 2 frags, down for 1 on the scoreboard, but it's always really messy and kind of just, you know, going for, yeah, the close combat rails, but that's not a reliable strategy. Meanwhile, Dramis been approaching this in a much more consistent manner. Putting himself 4 points in the lead already. And Anarchy, he's fast, but Slash, that's next level speed. And if it comes down to a runaway game, Dramis should be able to hold on to this.
Scary game to play near the Mega. I guess I would say if Kron wasn't a little bit late on that one, dropping down and trying to get a few little bits of extra health down there, unfortunately meant that he missed his rail shot. And I say missed the rail shot, there wasn't an angle for a shot to be made, so that's really unfortunate. You don't want to let someone pick up an item and get away without taking at least something, and normally a rail shot's a good little send-off that says, yeah, you picked up the item, but you're not going to get anywhere near as much utility from it. The chase is on. Kron critically low on stack and utility now. There's no armor to be found unless he can pick up a light that respawns soon, and the heavy itself 15 seconds away from appearing. So I mean, we're looking at a situation 100% Dramis, and it's just his map to now bully and control.
It absolutely is. The item delays are perfect for Dramis. 15 seconds in the Mega and the Heavy. He can just cycle them. Especially when he's going to continue landing rails like that, there's nothing that Kron can do. Putting himself defensively, it's LG on LG. Decent amount of damage from Kron, but insufficient, not enough.
With the stack difference there, that had to have been, I can take this fight if I hit basically every single shot. And that's not really how the cookie crumbles, I suppose. And the chase is going to continue here for Dramis, forcing Kron away from the heavy location, but with enough time to spare that Dramis is even able to deny the light. And this is when, close range rail aside, this is where a battle of lights becomes the scariest for the player that's on the back foot. Dramis has collected every light armor, for the most part, which now means that not only is he controlling all the armor, Kron is unable to pick any of it up. You're playing as a light champion. You are tender on the best of days, and Dramis clearly having a bit more accuracy in general. The rails are nice and consistent. And when that happens and you're in a Kron situation, what do you do? Because your opponent is now just out-damaging you. Your opponent is keeping all of the means that you would stay alive with. It's complete control, but if anything, absolute denial. Kron has no comeback mechanic right now. You know, there's no means to bring himself back in just now.
Both players have hit around the same number of rails. 11 for Dramis, 10 for Kron, but Dramis is landing them when they matter the most. He's able to close out the frags. Kron, he's able to deal damage with the railgun, but never really in a way that allows him to take away an item. But maybe that changes now. Kron secures himself a heavy, but he's in bad shape. Doesn't have a lot of health to work with. He's got that inject. Chooses to hang on to it. He will survive. And now the next fight is going to be for Mega. Kron sneaking in from below. Dramis figures out exactly where he is. Rockets coming through. Messy fight, and somehow Dramis still 15 points of health is all he needed to walk away with the frag.
That kind of fight can be one that will cause a player who's already far behind to almost check out of the map that's playing. I mean, if we're looking at a situation where things could have really worked there for Kron to get a frag, that was the opportunity. But all things considered, this isn't the worst case scenario just yet. Kron was at least able to damage Dramis enough that he was able to spawn and then pick up both of the important items. You know, we just saw there Kron lost a little bit of his stack. That's no doubt going to be a fast-paced rocket jump to make sure that he can take a fight on the heavy. But the gear shift begins. Dramis is 10 frags in the lead. 3 minutes are left on the clock. You're playing a champion that is faster than Anarchy, especially on a map like this. Dramis has no need to cement himself on this map anymore. I think, you know, completely giving up every item might give an avenue for Kron to somewhat come back, but all Dramis has to do now is waste that time. He's already wasted 30 seconds, secures himself another frag here, and perhaps a mountain too steep for Kron to climb on map number 1.
You know, I'm gonna call it. It's gonna be GG, even if he gets the frag now.
How do you chase someone for 10 more frags, yeah? I mean, that's it. What do you do?
And even there, right? Dramis again walking away with just a sliver of health. And here we go, Kron gets a frag, secures it before the mega spawns as well. He can now kind of just loop into Dramis's rotation of the items. Mega first, making his way towards heavy. But yeah, time is not on Kron's side right now. Even if he walks away with the heavy completely unharmed, which he will. He has to catch Dramis, and he has to catch him 10 bloody times in less than 2 minutes.
That's the problem. You picked up an item uncontested, and you think, hang on a minute, why did I just pick this up without having any sort of challenge? Oh, it's because he's not here. Why is he not here? Because he's happy to give it up. He knows that he's got 2 minutes left to go. That rocket was just rude on so many levels. And now a minute and a half to just run around and just do your thing. This was is the great benefit that these kind of champions can give a player is you mount a lead this gigantic, you have the speed advantage, the map may as well be over. Unless your opponent can do something miraculous to bring themselves back into the match, as rare as that is, you can just run away the remaining 2 or 3 minutes, and it just takes them time to secure the frag. The longer it takes to get even one here, the greater chance you have of just winning it comfortably in that second half, and that's really what's happened here. We're looking at the scoreline now becoming 16-2. Really, the map was decided many frags ago. This is just Ron pushing forward because why not? He's going to go around corners. He's probably going to go down. It just is what it is. And here comes another one.
Indeed. Half a minute left to go. Absolute mathematical impossibility. Right now, Dramis can take his hands off his keyboard. Just wait this one out, but both players still want to keep warm, stay fresh for the next one. Kron. We talked about it before beginning the series, right? Map 2, we both agreed, is the one where Kron has the better shot at. Blood Covenant, one of his best maps. Matchup that I think favors him quite significantly, playing Visor against Ranger. So if Kron is going to mount a comeback, it's gonna be now. And I think it's good that this is map 2, right? If it would have been map 3, then you'd sit here and say like, oh, okay, well, yeah, maybe he'll win that one, but it's already over. But if he can really just turn the momentum right now, if he can find this groove, secure this map and keep going, Kron still has a chance. It's a small chance, but this is the one where he's got to do it. This favors him.
It's the situation where I think the mental game can have its biggest significance, and that probably is why having the second map be the one that Kron on paper has the best chance on. This is why it's good, because if we're able to make it a 1-1, you can almost go into that final map with a fresh new perspective, maybe a little bit more confidence, the ability to make a decision that you otherwise wouldn't really make, something that might change the game for you. And as we go into map 2, it was a rough first time over. 2-19 being the final score, many of those final frags being Kron kind of just trying to make chase because he may as well do it, and, you know, Dramis just sort of punishes that accordingly. A lot of chases that I doubt Kron would have made the first 5 minutes of the map, but that's just generally how those late game, high scoring maps go. A player will sometimes feel like, well, the divide is so big now, if I don't do something about it, I won't have time. And the clock, the biggest enemy, you could almost suggest the biggest enemy of the duel, because it is such a motivator for decisions you do or don't make. How many players will look at the clock and think, I've got to do something, because if I don't do something now, I'm not going to have time. And so often that decision just doesn't work, and it just makes the lead even bigger. However, Blood Covenant, our next destination, where the utility alone gives Kron a bit more of a fighting chance.
I I feel like that rocket damage, I don't know if you've noticed, but the damage that Dramis dealt with the rocket launcher alone was just 1,000 points over anything that Kron did with any weapon. And I think that that just perfectly sums up how the game went. Because on Molten Falls, very often you see Railgun being the main weapon and LG, but the fact that it was rockets this time really showed that Dramis really had Kron's number, right? He was always on top of him, always dropping down, bullying him for every item, every choke point with that rocket. And Kron just didn't have an answer to it. So Dramis absolutely dominated map 1. Map 2, let's see how this is gonna go.
We saw elements of that even in the first fight of Molten, where Dramis takes the first burst of damage, and then all of a sudden he's waiting around the corner and he has a rocket launcher in hand. And I think the rest of the map was soon to follow. But yeah, map 2, this is the chance for Kron to, as we kind of saw in that first map, there's a clear idea to just prevent Dramis from being able to be as aggressive as he wants to be. It's very clear right now that when Dramis is the one that's pushing the advantage and he's the one making chase, that's his comfort zone. That's where he wants to be. This is a map and a champion matchup that could at least, in theory, I'm going to say in theory, give Kron something to prevent that.
I mean, it's going to be a game of positioning, perhaps even more so than your normal Quake match, right? Because what Dramis is going to want to do is get up close and personal. He wants to use those Ranger rocket jumps with his passive of reduced self-damage, close the gap, use the orb, burst damage right in Kron's face. Kron wants the complete opposite. He wants to keep Dramis at bay. He doesn't have any movement to work with, no burst damage, but he's got that piercing sight. He's got that information to know where his opponent is. Kron probably is going to want to play a very rail-heavy game, keep Dramis away from him, just pick away with the railgun. But it is Dramis who gets better spawn when it comes to the rail. And Kron immediately hurting. Oh my god, the damage!
I was going to mention that of all the spawns you could have had, this was probably the one Kron did not want. Mostly because you kind of had to make a decision at the very beginning. Obviously, you pick up the item, but it looked like Kron, rather than pushing forward and opting to go for a railgun straight away, which, to be fair, could have been the obvious decision, so I understand it, opted to drop down and pick up those hourglasses first. The problem is, in doing all of that, Dramis had plenty of time to get a rail himself and then just bully Kron with range before he has a chance to pick up anything that lets him compete. So that is just a stroke of bad luck for Kron. That was not the spawn he wanted.
Now it's just gonna turn into a game of item denial, weapon denial, in particular for Dramis. That's his #1 objective, the prime goal right now. Keep Kron away from the railgun. Looks like that's working out nicely so far, but he's gotta be careful. Kron might not have a rail, but that heavy machine gun, it bites. Kron actually managing to even up the stack. Heavy is about to spawn Dramis. He's gotta make a run for it. Kron pushing in, gets the frag, and walks away with the heavy too. Should be able to get up there. Get himself the railgun too.
Dramis was definitely not looking for Kron to take that entrance through. You could already see it. He had the angle set up, assuming that Kron was going to push and use that aggression as an opportunity to pick up a railgun. But I mean, clearly with the damage of the machine gun, I almost feel like Kron was thinking, well, why do I need the rail just now? I'm clearly doing enough damage here. Element of surprise worked out. Unfortunately, though, Dramis was able to secure another frag, and here comes that piercing sight for Kron. Opponent on the heavy, that was the expected, but what's the push going to be? An aggressive push is made. The rockets at close range once more have been the absolute moneymaker for Dramis at the moment. It's been the key to so many of these close range fights. Kron too early on the mega, and even if he was there, I just don't think he would have had the weapons on spawn to stay there long enough to pick it up.
Yeah. And he drops down. That's a bad situation to be in. Rails need to be on point. He lands the first. That is going to send Dramis back. Kron able to make his way onto the heavy. Oh, he's predictable though. This is the exact same route he took previous time he picked up heavy ketchup. Dramis was ready for it. Dramis knew. Planting that rocket at the top of the bounce pad. He's so prepared for it. Kron's gotta be careful not to fall into repetition, because Dramis has got his number.
Speaking of which, a close range fight with some delicious LG and absolutely no need. Oh, lovely, lovely little placement there from Dramis. You know you're going to pick up the heavy guaranteed. May as well get something off spawn and then deny a light at the same time. You can now pick up this item and put Kron in a horrendous situation. I mean, that's damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you moved, the orb would have got you. If you stayed there, too weak. This is looking a little bit like map number 1, and it just stems from Dramis not giving Kron room to do anything.
Thomas's rail has also been superb. Usually you'd expect a player on Visor hit more, but so far it's Dramis. 64% rail. Kron just now landing himself at 62, so it's close. There we go, Kron. Finally stringing together a few shots. This might be the opening that he needs. He's got some weapons to work with. Heavy up in 10 seconds. Drama is actually going to position himself there. Wants to take it away. I don't think he's gonna stick around. Realizes he doesn't want to overstay his welcome. Just wants to do exit damage, and he manages to do just that. Kron walks away with 2 major items in a row, but look at his stack catch-up. Nothing to write home about.
Especially with Dramis hitting rail shots the way he currently is. I know one was swiftly returned there from Kron, which is exactly what he needed in that situation. Dramis, nice timing on those light items as well. It's going to keep him in this fight, and he hasn't had need to use his orb in a hot minute, so likely that we might see that rail into rocket, and just like that, anything that Kron was building in regards to stack is swiftly undone. And now here comes Dramis, a green light, especially with that missed rail. The bait, perhaps, of the orb, trying to force Kron to do something he otherwise wouldn't have done. Now, the accuracy hasn't fully been there. There are some rather challenging shots to make vertically up the jump pad, so he isn't going to be able to stop Kron from picking up that mega at the very, very least. Wow, aggressive push. Some accuracy that just is not where it needs to be. Dramis has been missing most of his shots in that fight, and that is going to let Kron secure a second frag, and in good timing, as here comes that heavy.
I think Dramis got 21 points of damage out of 4 rockets.
Ugh.
Oh, that's good though. That is beautiful. Dramis, he's listening to our commentary. He says, I'll show them.
I think he heard you, Flea. I think he heard you.
He says, I'll show them what my rockets can do. First one just sending Kron flying into the room, and then midair finish it off. Kron again landing a rail. He's outpositioned. Dramis should be able to walk away with heavy, and Kron drops another frag against the heavy machine gun. He's been taking these rail fights, but they haven't all been going as well.
Now the accuracy is starting to really pick up here for Dramis, and we are entering, dare I say, a very similar excuse me, position to what the first map had. A sizable lead that is continuing to grow. And in this case, although it's 2 medium champions, a champion that once more arguably has a little bit more maneuverability, because you're going to have the access to more rocket jumps to get yourself out of situations or run away. The orb, of course, which can both get Ranger from point A to point B, but also punish some sort of aggressive advancement. I think that we're going to start to see elements of map 1 start to show their head here, because we're reaching that 3-minute mark. Dramis once again, Flea, has 10 frags in the lead. It just looks like history repeating itself in a slightly different way. And I mean, Kron trying to escape there, a valiant effort. But at this point, I feel like it's just a repeat of map 1.
It is. Kron trying to show us some defrag. Plasma jumps. But Dramis was there to disrupt it. And at this point, again, 12 frag deficit. And like we said, ketchup. Ranger, not particularly fast of a champion, but he does have more mobility with the rocket jumps and with that orb. I just don't see Kron as able to make up that deficit. So yeah, he's got that piercing side, but that cooldown, 45 seconds, or you can use it. 2 minutes left to go. Kron has got no time to make it happen.
I even saw there in that fight a couple of rails that just missed, and almost like a little smirk from Kron. Yeah, there's an element of often acceptance from Kron in these positions where he kind of knows how unrealistic it is that he'll win. But it just sort of further emphasizes the importance of that early game, and it's hard to pinpoint exactly what went wrong here for Kron, to be fair, because there was a split moment where Dramis wasn't really able to hit many of his shots. There were some messy fights. It resulted in a frag eventually, but it took forever, and then almost instantly, Dramis was able to flip it back on its head and start hitting all the shots again. So the aggression, the lockdown, I guess there has to be an element of predictability with how much predictive rockets Dramus was able to land, and setting up a rail angle, kind of knowing that Kron would be around the corner, and shock horror he was. So perhaps Dramus just had that number before this map even started, had a fair idea, and Kron wasn't able to be as varied, perhaps, as he could have been.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it, I think within the first, 2-3 minutes, that Kron was already starting to take the same routes.
Oh, that's so rude. That's so mean.
That's the kind of move that